NHL refs endure a lot. Way more than any fan can imagine, as not only do they have to deal with the constant ridicule between both the players and the fans, but they too are prone to injury. It's a rarity, but when they do accidentally get hit, they go down hard.
Boschman. Jared Poles just off the bench, can't control the puck. He takes a hit.
Murphy knocked into the Flames bench. And we'll have to keep our eye on him because Murphy got up and went into the other end and fell over here, tripped. So
sometimes it can end up causing a humorous highlight, such as when a puck bounces off of them and into the net.
Robert Bortuzzo here, who's got the puck now.
And he gets it in off the referee. It goes in, but that will not count.
But other times, it can lead to moments that turn fatal, and one referee got injured so badly that it almost ended his life. The date is February 9th, 2008. The Flyers and Rangers are set to face off in a divisional matchup. Prior to the game, Philly was 3rd place in the Eastern Conference and 1st in the Atlantic Division, while New York was 7th in the conference, but just 5 points behind Philly in the Atlantic. These two teams notoriously despise each other, so any game between the two was bound to get ugly. Just not in the way anyone would have expected. One of the referees that night was veteran Pat Dapuzzo, a highly respected linesman who's been refereeing since 1984. Dapuzzo's legacy is a lengthy one. He was on the ice during the 1991 Canada Cup final between the US and Canada.
Canada has defeated the United States by a final score of 6-3.
He was there when Mark Messier guaranteed he'd win Game 6 and then would proceed to score a hat trick.
For the empty net, Mark Messier, do you believe it? Do you believe it? He said we will win Game 6. He has just picked up the hat trick.
And he was even on the ice when the Great One decided to hang up the skates. His experience and communication with both the players and the coaches is what made him so beloved. Pat LaFontaine would call him, quote, a great one, and would go on to say that the players really respected him. If you had a problem with a call, he took the time to explain it. The Rangers would score once in the first period, and then again in the second. Trailing the game by 2 midway through the second period, Philly had to start generating chances. Flyers Steve Downey would attempt to drive the puck up ice, while Rangers Fedor Tyutin was positioning himself to check him straight into the boards. The two would collide, causing Downey to lose both possession of the puck and his balance. His leg would fly up into the air, making contact with none other than Pat Dapuzzo.
All tough kids that play hard, and he's like 5th all time in the minor leagues with 10 digits.
Shooting with a hit on Downey, but the linesman was involved.
Dapuzzo would unfortunately get sandwiched in between the two players during the collision, getting cut open by the skate of Downey. The hit would cause a brawl between both teams, while Dapuzzo was struggling to get up off the ice. Despite him being severely injured, however, Pat was still determined to break up the fight. He recalls, quote, when I saw 3 fights had simultaneously broken out between the Rangers and the Flyers, after Tyutin hit Downey, I tried to break them up. I guess I was delusional, but I'm old school. The doctors would put a towel over his eyes, would bring him into the locker room, and would stitch his nose back onto his face. They warned him, quote, if you go back out there, you could die. Dapuzzo would have 10 fractures in his face, have his right cheekbone completely shattered, he'd lose all of his teeth, his sense of smell, would develop sleep apnea, and would suffer from earaches due to having bone fragments in his ear. Because of all this, with the addition of 40 stitches and the eye droopiness, Pat's confidence would begin to drop. He would begin falling into a depression, a mental battle that he's previously had to face before. Dapuzzo mentioned back in 2011 that he had depression before during the mid-90s. He'd actually take a year of absence in 1995 to deal with the matter. 6 months after the Downey incident, Dapuzzo decided to undergo some tests, and it would provide some clarity. Pat would often display post-concussion symptoms, which would then cause severe depression, Crazy enough, the Teuton-Downey incident wasn't the only collision he would endure. He'd state, quote, "I had a bad collision with Slava Fetisov in New Jersey. Fetisov would go to the locker room, I threw up in the penalty box, and would work the rest of the game, even though it felt like the Meadowlands was spinning." He'd also recall 2 more instances in which he'd get sent flying over the boards, one of which he remembers would appear twice in ESPN's top 10 plays of the week. All of a sudden, it started to make sense, Pat would say. The Fetisov hit and the other hits he'd endure would eventually cause the post-concussion syndrome, which would then, unfortunately, lead into depression. Despite this, however, Pat would still continue to make a positive impact on the hockey world. GM Brian Burke would state that, quote, "Pat is a quality guy and a good friend. He'd noticed that Pat was struggling and was in need of work, and would offer him a role with the Maple Leafs in 2010 to become a part-time scout. Burke would provide Pat with stability as well as some tough love. 'You're my friend,' he'd say, 'but if you don't do your job, I will fire you.'" The job offer meant the world to Dapuzzo, with Pat stating, quote, "My spirit, my purpose, my entire life was rejuvenated." Cases like Dapuzzo's, in which a player or personnel would get clipped by a skate blade, were once considered a rarity back in the day, only seeing a few scary instances such as Malarchuk's or Zednik's occur. But sadly, they're becoming more common as of late. As many know, the tragic death of Adam Johnson was caused by a skate blade to the neck, and Martin Frk almost hit an opposing player's neck with a skate blade in a game overseas earlier this year as well. The sudden rise in skate injuries has alarmed the hockey world. Almost every professional league has began to make neck protectors mandatory, and rightfully so. You should always prepare for the unknown, even if you assume it will never occur. The sad reality, however, is that it usually takes a tragic incident to finally open up people's eyes. Dapuzzo's 24-year legendary career would end in a matter of seconds. Pat Dapuzzo showed the league that refs are just as prone to tragic accidents as the players are, but he also displayed an immense amount of strength both on and off the ice. Dapuzzo not only fought through the physical pain and the recovery, but he also had to face an intense mental battle. He was faced with adversity and overcame it. Pat's story is one of triumph during tragedy, as although the hit may have ended his career, the impact he's made on organizations, the players, and the league as a whole will never go forgotten.